Welcome to This Podcast is Making Me Thirsty, the number one destination for Seinfeld fans. This is Two Up and Two Down. Here's our producer, Chris, to start us off.
Welcome back. Today we have a Season 8 episode, The Yada Yada. All right, let's start it off with Tony. What's your first up?
Yeah, my first up is friend of the show, Suzanne Cryer. I think she delivers in this episode. Love her, especially towards the end, her kind of last scene there where she stops yada yadaing and gets the free facial and does that whole thing. I think George is a bit out of his league on this one. She's got, she's a bit of a bad girl. She's looks good. She yada yada is the sack. She's, I think she delivers in this episode. Everything about this episode screams guest stars. Lots of them, packed with them. I think her and she kind of is towards the top of that list for me. I think she does a great performance there with the way she delivers the yada yada yadas, the way she kind of, I guess she just really plays that character well. Kind of that, bad girl. You're not really sure what's going on there, but definitely keeping George on his toes. So Suzanne Cryer, first thumbs up.
So over to you, Chris. What's your first up?
I love Marcy, one of the most memorable George girlfriends for sure. I'm going to stick with that theme. This is one of the greatest guest stars, in the I would say, season 5s and on, if you will, Tim Whatley. And he really brought it from the Jewish conversion jokes with Father Curtis and the shtickle of fluoride. And he was just so funny from his opening scene at Monk's to the multiple scenes, obviously, at his dentist's office. Loved it. Whatley brought it. Some of these guys take a little dip. He was obviously great in the Beard and some other episodes, and he came back really strong on yada yada. So Whatley, Bryan Cranston, of course, my first one up.
Yeah, great episode by Brian there. So yeah, back-to-back ups for guest stars and well-deserved too. Tony, what's your second up here?
Yeah, I'm going to keep that theme going. I think another guest star we all love, and I think he delivered in this episode, is Mickey, Danny Woodburn, friend of the show. Specifically, we can go back and forth here. It could turn into a down if we think about it too much. It might be too much Mickey and Kramer, but I love the Mickey and Kramer fight. I love Kramer. How many wives is that for you? Everyone's your type. Mickey, it's go time. They're fighting it out. Kramer's up here, Mickey's down there. Lane's holding him back. Woodburn talked about the Mickey character with us, how he kind of has a short fuse. We see it there, brilliantly played. Mickey just delivers in this episode. I think there's a lot of them. I'll give you that if you want to talk downs, maybe, but I think that scene alone is enough, Mickey, to give him an up. I love him and Kramer just going at it. The shirt twirl is always a good one too. We won't get into the two dinner scenes, might be played out. The up though is the Kramer and Mickey kind of scuffle there. Just the two of them going at it. One's tall, one's little. Woodburn talked about that scene with us and how great it was to play off of Michael Richards, and it really shows. That's my up.
Yeah, very good. Danny, always brought it on the show. So great pick there. Listen, that's 3 guest stars. You want to go with the 4th, Chris? What's your second up?
Yeah, a lot of great guest stars, and the beauty of this podcast is we get insights that no one else gets. So Suzanne Cryer gave us a good one. I'm going to agree with her when she spoke to us, and it gets overlooked in this episode. It's called the Yada Yada episode, but I think the real funny meat of this is the anti-dentite stuff. Yeah, from Jerry and Kramer argued about it. They do have their own schools. To then obviously, you anti-dentite bastard, which is it's just a great line at the end there. So for me, it's the anti-dentite stuff throughout the episode, but clearly when Jerry and Kramer start that conversation at the apartment, thumbs up.
All right, great. So now let's go with downs. Tony, what's your first?
Yeah, I'm glad I'm going first on these because this is one I'm sure Chris was going to take. But this is just a bad Costanza episode. Unfortunately, I mean that's going to bring an episode down. We'll get to that when we get to it. But Costanza showing up to Watley's office when Jerry's in there, showing up to the confessional thing for no reason. I mean, what is George doing? It's Chris's point. Chris brings this up all the time. Is they're kind of forcing things that. Why is George showing up to the dentist office? I never understand that. Well, I knew you had an appointment. He just comes in and plays. It's just why had that conversation there? Then why show back up to the confessional part? It's a bad Costanza episode. I mean, he's my down in this. Don't when Costanza gets it down, it's that's what season 8 and 9 is all about, right? So yeah, that's my down. It's just Costanza is my second down.
Yeah, always tough when George is a down. So yeah. Chris, over to you. What's your first down?
Yeah, bad George. I got to do something. And then I'll never forget Kramer comes in and says the same line. Always bother me. But for me, it's the elephant in the room here. It's the enough with the yada yada. I get it. It's the name of the show. But I counted 22 references to the yada yada. The show's supposed to be 22 minutes long. You can't be yada yada in every goddamn thing. And, the one that stood out the most for me, I know America loves it. Tony probably loves it. Is Elaine. I've yada yada sex. And then the whole lobster bisque story. I mean, with her feet up, I can't stand that. So for me, the yada yada stuff, I get it. It's yada yada. But when Suzanne Cryer, Melman, all these guys say the anti-dentite stuff is the strength of it, stop shoving the yada yadas down our throat, all right? So, first down.
All right. Well, Tony, can you back us up? Was the Elaine yada yada story about the lobster bisque that bad of a down?
Well, I agree with Chris. I wrote yada yada as a down. It definitely was overplayed. I think worse than the lobster bisque, which I don't hate as much as O'Hara hates. I'll give Elaine that delivery. I lean the other way a little bit on that one, but I hate the Elaine when she's talking to Artie and she's like blah 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 and does other yada yada versions. That bothers me even more. That to me is the tipping point when the whole fucking thing collapses. But that's not my down, but I did want to piggyback off that. My down, and to me, quite possibly the worst scene in the history of the show. I don't know if I've ever seen it before. I don't know if it's just on Netflix or what. Maybe I just never watched it. I don't remember it. But the cold open in this episode is just terrible. George and Jerry right next to each other in a urinal. First of all, we all know George is a stall man. He's not at a urinal. And if he is at a urinal, he's definitely not right next to Jerry. And he's definitely not talking to Jerry about Wilt Chamberlain and books and who's your favorite Chamberlain, what books on your desert island. It is one of the worst scenes of all time. And we've hammered these cold opens for forever on seasons 8 and 9. This is by far one of the worst cold opens I've ever seen in my life. It makes no sense on any level, and it's not funny. That's my second down, the terrible cold open.
Yeah, with that cold opening, I don't remember it airing, and it may have aired once, but on syndication, I don't ever recall seeing it. But you're right; it is on Netflix. You can see that cold open, and yeah, it's bad. So yeah, so we'll go back to you, Chris. What's your second down here?
Yeah, it's a passionate down. I like it. I like it a lot. For me, it's Elaine and the adoption guy. You mentioned the blah, blah, blah thing. I could piggyback off that. The adoption guy with his, weird teeth and her trying to be all, sexy. And I thought she was actually kind of gross in this episode a little bit. Just me. That whole storyline, they brought Deborah Messing back. I did like when, Mickey was talking with her about how many marriages. Oh, it's only number 2 for you. Funny, but that storyline again, forced, right? Glad to have her back, but was it needed? Again, we talk about flows, and I think the flow on this was a little off as well. Clearly, with George popping in all these things, just made no sense. It was like a cartoon, and then the adoption guy just kind of solidified that theory. Like, what are we doing with this? And then he shows up at the wedding. He's at the wedding with her. So did Elaine bang him already, or what's going on there? Or does she have to continue to bang him? none of it made sense. So for me, the adoption guy and Elaine storyline, down.
Yeah, I totally agree with that whole Elaine storyline. So good points there. So let's wrap it up. Tony, what do you have for your final grade here?
Yeah, I wrote down a couple. I'm actually going even lower than what I wrote down, to be honest with you, as I'm talking this through. I think I was in a pretty good mood when I rewatched this. I thought the whole wedding scene fell apart. I didn't know why the girl was crying. Aside from the anti-dente bastard line, which obviously we're going to like, and the blacks and Jews line by Messing is definitely a showstopper. But this whole episode, Chris has touched on it. It falls flat. It doesn't have a great tempo. They bang the yada yada to death. It's a terrible George, and a terrible George, as Chris always says, can really bring something down. There's not enough here with even the Stan Cryer we touched on, even Mickey, these guest stars, they're trying to bring this thing up on a season 8. They're trying to bring it up with these things, but even too much, Mickey. I mean, there's so many scenes with Mickey and Kramer getting dinner. I can't go. I know this is a Pink Hat favorite, but it's a C-. I think yada yada is a C-. I'm going to try and be fair. I think that's as fair as I can be. I'm not going any higher than that. I think it's when you throw in the cold oven, especially in a bad George. It's just, as Chris touched on, Elaine's not terrific either. Mickey can only carry something so far, right? That's my grade, C- for the yada yada yada.
All right, C- there. Chris, what's your grade?
Yeah, the yada yada. It's a polarizing episode for us, at least. America probably loves it. But listen, the more I think about this one, and when I think about the structure of the show and the history of the show and what this represents, I don't like it. I had a similar grade, but I'm changing it. I'm going D+ for the yada yada. From your passion on the cold open to your point, none of the 4 main characters really elevating the show. And Suzanne, this is one of those, Suzanne Cryer talked about it, that Melman told her this is going to be a big show. Like, that was before they even read the script or, started rehearsing. So there was so much pressure and hype associated with this show. And I remember live, they gave it the extra time. The whole thing, they really wanted it to be a success. Not to say it wasn't, but again, catchphrases, 22 of them, 22 minutes. Come on, too much. And yeah, Wally, Mickey, they can only carry a show so far. I got to be true to myself here, so it's a D+. Yada yada is a D+.
Well, thank you guys for those grades. That wraps it up for the yada yada, and we'll see everybody on the next one.